Okay, so today I wanted to really talk about who you've worked with and to get to know the characters really of the fighters. So first of all, let's start with probably one of your biggest names you work with currently is Tyson Fury. What is Tyson like?
Well, as a person, he's awesome. Just to be around him, it's you just never know what to expect. So always got to keep your hands up. But such a positive note, and just a fun guy to be with, and that's what makes my job so interesting. It's not about the title fights anymore; it's about the characters. And I think I've mentioned that to you before, and Tyson definitely fits up on top of the totem pole when it comes to different personalities.
With Tyson, we see he's a very jovial character. He likes to crack a lot of jokes. He can also be very serious when needs to be. Is he like that off camera as well?
Yeah, that's a good question, and yeah, you're right. When walking into the gym, I don't know what Tyson Fury I'm gonna be seeing or running into. The guy that's gonna be joking around, and or the guy that is taking his training serious. Let me rephrase that. He's always taking his training serious. And I always said a lot of the fighters, during a 3 minute round, they'll kind of bullshit a little bit and talk to you and take a break. Tyson Fury, whether he's shadow boxing, whether he's jumping rope, whether he's hitting the bag, whether he's talking to you, he's always putting in those 3 minutes worth of work. So, and that shows me a lot of the discipline. But yeah, he's just a character, man. Like
You mentioned for you, it's not about the title fights no more, it's about the characters. Is Tyson one of the guys who keeps you coming back to the day job, keeps you working still at this age?
yeah, not only Tyson Fury, but the team around him. They're all good people, man, and they all have the same goal, and that's to give Tyson Fury 150% of our time. And yeah, that's what makes it fun. It's no, no egos or nothing like that. We're like a clock, a Swiss clock, where everything is set in its pattern, and if they all work together, then we got a pretty good unit.
In terms of last one on Tyson Fury, in terms of him being such a character, have you ever worked with anyone just like Tyson Fury?
No, no, not through the whole pictures. Skill wise, talent wise, yeah, that's for sure. But when it comes to personality, he could have his own Tyson Fury show and do pretty good with it. That's just his personality, and that's what makes it so much fun. For him to come in with a strong, heavy accent, for him just to be joking around, and it's quite serious. But once he gets down to business, it's all business, and that's what I respect a lot about him.
Absolutely. You also just mentioned Vladimir Klitschko. You worked with him for a very long time, as you mentioned there. What is Vladimir like? He comes across as a gentleman, is the best way I can put it. What is he like?
Yeah, yeah, him and Vitali. 'Cause I was pleasant enough to work with both of them for 10 years. I think Vladimir like 10 years, Vitali like 8 years. But overall, when I look at the whole broad picture of the people I've worked with, who would I say were the classiest ones, and the ones that didn't have egos, and the ones that were just great at what they did were both the Klitschko brothers. I was real privileged to be part of their team for so many years. And but everything happens, I guess, through fate, right? Because I always go back. I tell Vitaly, I said it was December the 12th, 1991. He says 92. But the point is when the Soviet Union first broke, we took a team of professional boxers and kickboxers to Kiev to fight the Ukrainians. And at that time, I had a kickboxer, Mark Longo. So we went up there, and I didn't know nothing about the Klitschkos, but they were already young stars in the Ukraine. They had posters and billboards up there, the side of the buildings, their pictures, and we're at the fights, and they're there, and I didn't get a chance to say hi to them. But when they started training in Las Vegas, I brought up those moments, and I had a poster that everybody signed, and that's how we ended up, making that first contact. And then when it was time to do Ocean's 11, when Vladimir, during the robbery, Vladimir is fighting Lennox Lewis, and I just happened to be the cut man for Vladimir Klitschko. And then from there on, he told Emmanuel Stewart that he wanted the guy that was his cut man in the movie, and that was me.
You mentioned obviously being a cut man, and you used to be a boxing trainer back in the day. Why did your journey turn to Cutsman?
Well, that was always my goal. Well, going way back, before I moved, I've been in Las Vegas 26 years now. I came here to do exactly this, right? But before that, I had a school of kickboxing. And as a matter of fact, one of my instructors, when I was in the military, I was stationed in Thailand in 1974 and 75. That whole year, I trained in the martial arts. And Master Scan, that was we were about the same age, but his brothers are the ones that instructed us. Well, he's a master in Manchester now. So, but that's how I got started, is through that. And then I opened up my own school of kickboxing, and I was a trainer. I was a world-class trainer, and but I wanted to learn how to be a cut man just to expand my the business. But floating to the top, being a cut man just kind of floated up there. But I made the move to Las Vegas, and when I made the move to Las Vegas, I didn't go there to be a trainer because I thought all the great trainers in the world were in Las Vegas, right? So I get there just to be a cut man, but as I'm in the gyms, I'm watching these guys do pads, and I'm watching them do this, and I said, man, I could do that, and I could do that. And I started doing pads for one of the first guys I started working with was Mike McCallum, the body snatcher. And so I started working with him, and people started realizing that I could do pads. I was real good at doing pads, but I had an 8-to-5 job. I worked for RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company, so I couldn't give you 150% of my time as a trainer. So I concentrated more on being a cut man, and during the days, because pro boxers in Vegas, they'll train from like 2 to 3, and so when they would call me to do pads, I would kind of leave work and go do pads, and my phone rang. I'd run outside and, hello, Jacob here, just like I'm working, right? So I kind of stuck away. But yeah, I love training. I love doing pads, but that just kind of, being a cut man just kind of floated to the top.
And to be fair, it's not served you too far wrong, is it?
No, not that bad.
I want to sort of divulge across to you as Cutsman in the UFC. A couple of guys you worked with over there. You worked very early in his career with Khabib. Talk about his character. What was he like?
Yeah, super guy. I've been privileged. That's a good question, and you're the first one ever to ask me about Khabib here. But I've worked with so many Russians, Eastern Bloc fighters from boxing and all that, and so they're very quiet in the beginning, very, very humble, very quiet, very studious. But once they have your respect, man, they'll cover your back all the way. And Khabib was one of them. He was one of the first ones from Dagestan, that Uzbekistan area, where they started fighting. And I remember he had told me that he was going to give me one of his hats, but it was good. And, when I left the UFC, I hadn't seen him for a while. And I was doing a Bellator, and some of the fighters from Dagestan were there also. And of course, he was in the dressing rooms, and he pulls me aside, and he takes a selfie with me, so we've always had that relationship. And I'm glad you asked this, because let me tell you, man, every time I would go listen, because at that time I was already with Bellator, but when I would get into the dressing room and I would get the list of the fighters that are fighting, when I saw 3 or 4 guys from Dagestan on the card, I knew I was going to wrap their hands. They wanted nobody else to wrap their hands but me. And so I just knew I was going to work, but for me, it's a pleasure for them to request, that I be the one to take care of them. It's a big honor. But yeah, Khabib is definitely, they're all real nice, humble guys, and I wish I could have, just continued watching Khabib the way he continued doing his career. But, what he's doing now with the fight game is awesome. So a lot of respect to him. And, I'm sure I'll run into him somewhere, somehow. And I'm sure we'll rekindle our friendship.
From those early days with Khabib, could you tell he was going to be special?
Yeah, he was off the wall, man. he just wrapping his hands, and a lot of these guys from Dagestan really never had their hands wrapped. Keep in mind, they're all wrestlers and all that, but I would wrap their hands, and he would look at them and all that. But who would have thought, that he was going to be as good as he is right now? But yeah, he was putting guys away easily.
Another guy you work with, a massive name in sport in general, Brock Lesnar. Talk a bit about Brock. He comes across very aggressive at times. He seems to just love a fight. What is he like personally?
Yeah, you're right. That's being aggressive, right? That's Brock Lesnar, and we'll kind of get into that. But when he first signed with the UFC, one of the requirements was that I would wrap his hands. So the day after the weigh-ins, when he was going to fight, him and I were at the Mandalay Bay, I think, and him and I go into the dressing room, and my daughter Carla's with us. And she's a big wrestling fan, big time. So she's in seventh heaven, and I'm wrapping Brock's hands, and we're making that communication. And he likes them. I cut the wrap off, and I gave it to my daughter. So we took pictures and all that. So I was always the designated guy to work with Brock on that, and it was cool because I think he fought. I can't remember who he fought. I'm wrapping his hands, and I'm putting the gloves on him, and the gloves rip. It's like the Hulk. And I'm thinking, oh shit, man. I tell Burt Watson, our coordinator, he goes, Stitch, we got to do something because we only have 2 pair. People are saying there were 5X gloves, but they're actually 4X gloves. So I remember working with Vladimir Klitschko, they would put Vaseline on their wraps, and then they would slide the gloves in. So I did that. All right. So anyway, yeah. So I go to wrap his hands, and I finally get him on. But there was another time when I'm wrapping his hands, and I see his t-shirt. Everybody had t-shirts at that time. I said, man, that's a nice shirt. He goes, I have one for you. He goes, I packed one for you. He said, well, my wife asked me, should I get one for Stitch? And I said, yes. So he put one of the team t-shirts in his bag, and after I wrapped his hands, he reached in there and gave it to me, right? And but then there was another time during the tough shows, the Ultimate Fighter. I always got a tank top from from the coaches for every fight, every season that I worked, and gave it to my son Daniel. And so I told Brock about that. And I walk in the next day, and I'm wrapping somebody's hands, and he drops a UFC bag there with multiple stuff. And then he goes and sits in the other side of the room. You're talking about being aggressive, right? He sits in the other side of the room, and I look at him. I said, Brock, you love me, don't you? And he just kind of, goes like that. But I show you that aggressiveness. You talked about that. I think he fought Frank Mir, and it's a great fight, right? So I walk into the dressing room to congratulate him later on after the fight, right? So Eric and all his coaches are on the other side of the dressing room, and he's on the other side, just him and his wife. And they're like little kids kind of waiting to see if he's going to give them the okay to come and walk around and all that. And it looked like kids that were in the office with the principal. And so I walk in, hey, Stitch, hey, so he showed me that love, right? There's times when he came back from his surgery where I saw him the first time, and he gives me a big chest bump. And, so we've always had a super, super relationship. But I'm going to show you how big these gloves are, bro. Look at this. These are I kept them. Right, these are the actual gloves that Brock Lesnar fit. But look at this, that's insane, So I think you're the first guy, and they signed them for me, and they kind of got a little. I rubbed them a little too before but nonetheless, they're Brock Lesnar's, and I got them.
Fantastic.
Great. Yeah, tremendous stories, man. And those are the type of things that make my job so entertaining. Is that I get to work with guys like this. Fedor, Crow Cop. Just so many of these mega superstars.
Absolutely. You mentioned the tremendous stories. I was going to ask you, what is your favorite memory or your favorite story from your career so far?
Man, brother, I got tons of them. I'm telling you, there's so many, there's so many who pick, but there's the thing that, man, there's so many. But the thing that really kind of takes you to the top is, how many times these guys, these gladiators, have given me a kiss and tell me they love me. Those are the moments that are real special. But I'll give you one with Vladimir Klitschko when he fought Anthony Joshua. Right, here we are in front of 90,000 of you guys. 90,000 Brits is like 150,000 somebody else. It was so loud there. But I didn't see him till Friday at the weigh-ins because my daughter Carla had just got married Wednesday in Crete. So I flew into London on Thursday and didn't see him till Friday at the weigh-ins. But, he understands, I'm talking to him and Vitali, and they understand that I'm there to take care of them. And I understand the mental psychology of a fighter the night before a fight. They can't sleep, So I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, Vladimir, don't worry about nothing tomorrow. I said, I'm going to take care of you like you're my son. And I leave because I know, I put that in his head. Here I am right before Michael Buffer does the announcements. Number one, walking into the arena was insane. It was so loud, it just buzzed. But here I am in front of all these millions of people watching before Michael Buffer does the announcements, and I'm putting the final Vaseline on Vladimir, and we're about this far apart, and he says, "You could call me son." Bro, that gave me chills, man. The most biggest fight of his career, and I had some effect to it. And months later, I run into him in Germany. I'm doing a show in Germany. And I said, "Vladimir, I have to ask you about that moment, that time." And he said, "Stitch, there's very few people I trust with my life. You are one of them." So, but, this, I treat you like you're my son, came from Lyoto Machida when he fought Rashad Evans. He beat him for the world title. And another guy, I always worked with Lyoto Machida. I was always the designated one to work with him. But the thing that was so impressive there is his father's he's Japanese, Brazilian, but Japanese, but very proud Japanese warrior, shogunnish. And I go in the dressing room and his father's sitting there and he acknowledges me. And I'm telling Lyoto how proud I am of him. And he looks at me and he says, "Stitch, in the ring, you are my father." So, and I look at his father, and his father gives me that approval. And I knew at that point that my position in what I do with these guys is to take care of them. Carol Parisian, I tell you, I got a shitload of stories, man, and they're all true. Carol Parisian fought Drew Fickett. This is at the Marine base in Camp Pendleton, Miramar. Big old cut here. And I get in there and I start working on him. And at that time, Manny Gambarian and Eric, I can't remember Eric's last name, they were young. They were the coaches. And they kind of freaked out. They saw the big cut and they didn't, they kind of lost their composure. And my job as a cut man is not to give instructions. But at that point, I knew that I had to step in because it wasn't fair for Carol to have a disadvantage like that. So I'm working on the cut, and it's a big old cut. The thing that freaked him out is he's down on his knees and you can see the big screen. He's looking at the screen and they have a close-up on him and he opens a cut up like this and people go, "Oh." So it was a big cut, right? But I'm working on him and I said, "Look, don't worry about nothing. You just stay on the stand-up. Don't get on the ground. You get on the ground, time up, stay on stand-up." And he did, and he won. But shows later, I'm at the MGM in Las Vegas and he's sitting there with his father. And I go say hi to him. "Hey, how you doing?" and all that. And his father's very Armenian, and very family-oriented. And he looks at me, he says, he goes, "I want to invite you to my house for dinner. Thank you for taking care of my son." So those moments like that they're priceless to me.
Absolutely. Is there anybody that you've always wanted to work with or have very nearly come close to working with and it never came to fruition?
Good question. No, I've been blessed, man. There's I've been blessed. Things just happen. And, to this point, I swear I've never asked for one job. I'm just very proud. And, Floyd, I could have had a chance to work with Floyd Mayweather before Rafael Garcia came on. But I'm glad that Rafael got the job. That was more suited for him than me. But no, I've been blessed.
Fantastic. Well, Stitch, I won't keep you no longer. I appreciate your time. It's a pleasure speaking to you and listening as well, as always.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate it.